Hey kids, Piston Fly here, hope you're well. Welcome back to the channel for my final ride on the Kawasaki Versys 1100 Grand Tour SE before I take her back to Kawasaki UK tomorrow. I thought I'd just come out on the bike one last time and give you my final thoughts on the machine. Okay, so welcome back to the channel folks, and my final ride on the big Kawasaki. In this video, what I thought I'd do is give you 5 things that I hate about the bike. Well, that may be a bit of a strong word. 5 things I don't like about the bike, and 5 things that I do like about the bike, or rather 5 things I love about the bike. And then kind of summarise my thoughts to come to a conclusion as to whether this big all-round motorcycle is brilliant or bland. So without further ado, let's get the negatives out of the way. Alright, the first thing on my negatives list on the big Versys then are the looks of the bike. Very much a subjective thing, but let me get out of the way and feast your eyes on this, the Kawasaki Versys 1100 Grand Tour SE. Now for me, a bike has to look fantastic for me to want to buy it. Now I'm not saying it's the ugliest bike on the market by any means, but there's something about this front end that doesn't quite work for me. It's to do with this sort of pointy bit here. I mean, you might love it, and as I say, it's super subjective, but for me, the bike doesn't look, and also with the screen up, which you would want it up in that high position most of the time, it just looks a bit odd at that front end, a little bit duck-billed platypus or something. Anyway, for me, the looks of the bike just don't do it. You might love it, and I hope you do, but yeah, personal choice, but the looks, one for the negative list. Alright, next up on the negatives list then is this, the USB port. Now it's good that it's got a USB port, it's here on the handlebars, you see, you pull that down there, and there's the port there, it's a USB-C type thing. But as you can probably already see, look how wobbly that is. When you're riding along, it just flicks around and moves about, and it just has a feeling of low quality. I thought it might just be that these needed doing up, but if you look, it's on like rubber bungs there, so I think that's how it's meant to be. So for me, it surprises me because Kawasaki's have great build quality, but it's just naff. Okay, next on the list of negatives then is what I'm saying is a buzzy seat at high revs. Now you don't normally sit in third gear at 50 miles an hour, but I'm just doing this to demonstrate at 5,000 RPM as I'm at the moment, there's quite a lot of buzz through the seat. As I increase the revs, they just get a little bit worse actually. Of course, once you change gear, they do get a little bit less, but there are certain rev bands on the bike where you get some buzziness through the seat, and that for me personally it's one of those things that just annoys me about a motorcycle. They're not terrible. I've been on worse bikes and more buzzy bikes than this, but there is definitely vibration there, and for a Kawasaki 4-cylinder, that to me is very disappointing. I think Kawasaki make the best 4-cylinder engines in the business, and they're normally very, very smooth. On the big 1100 SX, the Ninja I rode a couple of weeks back, that was very smooth. On my Kawasaki, the Z900 RS, the 4-cylinder engine on that, very smooth, no buzz. On this one though, certain revs, there is a little bit of buzziness through the seat, through the pegs. Well, not so much through the pegs, through the handlebars I suppose, more than the pegs. But it's there, and I don't like that. So that's another of the things I don't like about the bike. Next up, while we're having a bit of a whinge, the instrumentation on the bike. I just think it looks a bit old school. Let me switch her on for you, and you can see what happens as it goes through the startup procedure. It's got this mix of modern TFT, which I quite like this bit, plus the analogue tachometer or rev counter. Now normally I like analogue dials on bikes, particularly if they're retro bikes. This isn't a retro bike. I think this would look just better if you had just a bigger version of that TFT and that was it. So yeah, another thumbs down for me I'm afraid on the Versys, down to the old school instrumentation. Just doesn't look quite right on this bike, I don't think. Right, now please don't get me wrong about the Versys. It is basically a very good bike. I am clutching at straws a little bit as I come towards the end of my negatives list. But let me show you something that surprised me a little bit on the bike, because Kawasaki's in my mind always have excellent build quality. That goes right, you know, through the bike, including things like switchgear. Now on this, the switchgear is okay, except this indicator button. Look, it's just a bit flim-flam, and when you've got big thick gloves on, it can be quite hard to get hold of, I found. So again, a very, very small point, and it might seem like a silly whinge, but it's one of those things that day to day just annoys you. If you've got big gloves on, it's quite hard to get at that indicator button. Alright, enough whinging, Andy, so much for the negatives. Let's get on to the 5 things that I love about the Kawasaki Versys 1100 Grand Tour SE. Okay, so first thing on my positives list then, and this is immediately sounds like I'm doing a bit of backtracking here, because I also put this in my negatives list, but hear me out. So the first thing is the smooth and powerful 4-cylinder engine. Now in the main, the engine on here is lovely, and it is smooth and it is powerful. It does have that bit of buzziness, as I said in my hates list though, so it does sound like I'm being a bit contradictory here, but overall I love this engine, and the smooth, powerful nature of this unit on here actually outweighs that negative point that I said about the buzziness on it. If you've not experienced a 4-cylinder bike before, well, give one a go. I think you might be surprised at how good they are. Unlike this road, which is absolutely hideous. Alright, moving on then through the positives list, and one of the things I love about this style of bike is the comfort that they offer, and the Versys 1100 is no different. This is a very comfortable place to be, helped by this big old cushioned seat here, which is a really nice seat to be in. It's nice and wide, nice and padded, big wide handlebars, classic upright riding position, and I suspect even the pillion would be comfortable on here. Big seat again, plus you've got this nice backrest on this version which has the top box, so yeah, comfort wise is a real scorer on the big Versys. Next up on my positive list is this. The quick shifter on here. It is absolutely splendid. I don't know if quick shifters just somehow suit 4-cylinder bikes better than they do twins, but it just seems to be so much smoother on here, both down and up the box, than on twin-cylinder bikes. It's really nice. I suppose I should say the quick shifter and blipper, because it's down the box as well as up. Beautiful and smooth. Really like that. One of the better quick shifters I've come across, so that's another one for the list of likes. Alright, to number 4 on my positives list then, and that is, again, this may be a little area where it sounds like I'm being contradictory, because I mentioned part of this in my negatives list when I talked about the indicator switch, but generally speaking, the build quality on the Kawasaki is absolutely incredible. The fit and finish on this bike is absolutely beautiful, other than that indicator switch. I mean, check out that paintwork. It's just lustrous. It's got this sort of metal flake type look in there. It looks lovely and deep. Everything about the bike is nicely made, well put together. The panels fit nicely. There's not loose rattles. The wheels look pretty good. I mean, it's just a nice nicely built bit of kit, I think, and that is, I think, in my experience, is the case with all Kawasaki. So fit and finish, build quality on the big Versys, big thumbs up. And the last thing that I want to mention on my pros list for the bike is the weather protection. It's physically a big old bike, this. It's got great road presence, but also it's got a great frontal area on it, and that means together with this big windscreen, particularly when it's in its fully up position, they've got very good weather protection. I'm propping a bubbler calm here. Hopefully you can hear there's not a lot of wind hitting the face. In fact, it's going above my helmet with the screen in the uppermost position, and in the lower half of the body I'm completely protected by this big fairing and so on. One of the great things about a bike like this is the weather protection, of course, and this one's particularly good in that respect. With the screen down, there's a little bit of buzziness on the top of the helmet. Obviously it depends how tall you are as well. I'm 5'8", so I'm not a particularly tall fellow, so that may be not so good for you if you're a big person, I don't know, but certainly if you're a medium-sized person or smaller like me, you're sat here in a bubbler calm, and it really is a pleasant place to be on the big Kawasaki. Okay, so there we have it. That's my final look at the pros and cons of the Kawasaki Versys 1100 Grand Tour, in this case SE. So going back to that original question I posed, is it brilliant or is it bland? Well, I'm afraid for me it's probably more the latter. I think saying it's bland is a little bit too cruel, but I don't think it's brilliant either. It's a nice bike. It does everything it should do, but it doesn't completely float my boat. I think if I was in the market for a touring bike, a big Kawasaki, I'd probably go for the Ninja 1100 SX. If you've not seen my review of that, do check out the link in the corner somewhere, and I'll take you through that. But yeah, so give one a ride, see what you think for yourself, but for me, I don't think it's for me. Stop recording. How annoying. Camera blew over at the last minute. Smashed the back of it, look at that.